Yeah, so I'm Arnold, and today we're going to be speaking about what happens to music when it meets other forms of art, what happened in history, and what we can learn about the connection between music and games, and kind of our company's take on that. And we're going to start with these two gentlemen. On the left we have Bach, and on the right we have Vivaldi. They're both well-known composers. Roughly from the same time, they're considered Baroque musicians, and you probably know music by both of them. If you would know one piece by Bach, it would probably be the Toccata and Fuga in D minor, and if you would know one piece by Vivaldi, it would be the Four Seasons. And while they might look relatively the same, they actually represent two very different approaches in music. Bach calls his piece the Toccata and Fuga in D minor, and it's actually a technical term. It's a musical structure and the scale which it is composed in. It's basically like calling your game RPG number 3. And Vivaldi calls his piece the Four Seasons, sorry. And that's very already limiting for him. He's not just composing music for the music, he's composing a story. And limits himself. He's going to have 4 pieces to it, and he's going to have certain moods at certain times. And Vivaldi's music is actually a slave to a story. It's not standing on its own, but Bach's music is just music. It's just there to be pretty on itself. And throughout this lecture, we're going to have a fight between those two approaches and see what happened in history. So what happens when music meets other forms of art? The first form of art that we actually meet is the theater, and that happens in Greece around 5th century BC. And the Greek choir actually starts for a technical reason because the main actor has to switch costumes, and they kind of want to fill that time. And also, they don't want to produce a whole big fights and stuff like that, so they make music to tell that story. And at the beginning, it's not even very musical, but with time, it becomes more music-based. And at some point, they actually had it pretty interactive, where the choir would represent what the audience were thinking about the story. And then, in this case, the music is a slave. The music there to support something, to support the story and the act. But then, roughly 2,000 years later, we find ourselves with the opera, and in the opera, the situation is very different. It's the music is the most important thing. It's more important than acting, and if you've ever been to the opera, then acting is apparently not a big deal there. And it's more important than the lyrics, and actually the whole story is told through the music, and the music is first in production. You first compose the music, and then everything is built for it. And in this case, the music is the master. Then we find ourselves with the movies, and with the movies, the music finds itself with new problem, and that's syncing problems. Because in theater or the opera, the actors could sync to the music, right? But in films, you suddenly have to have the music, something happening in the music at a very specific point. And because now Aragorn killed the orc, it happens now, and you can't play with that. And given the fact that music is a time-based art, it's a big challenge. And obviously the music is less important than the acting and the story, and is the last in production together with sound effects. And it's a slave to the story. But then a few years later, we find ourselves with musicals. And musicals are, again, pretty much like the opera. They make it big throughout the 60s, but music is the most important thing there. It's more important than all the other components. And again, the story is being told through the music and by the music, and it's the first in production. You first compose the music, and then you build everything for it. And here it is, the master. Later, we invent the TV, and in the TV, the situation is a bit more complex because there are a lot of places where music is being used on the TV. Just a few examples, or news, or series, or commercials. But there is a common ground to everyone, and in all cases, the music is there to support a certain experience or a certain feeling that you want the viewer to have. For example, the music before news is always scary and stuff are happening because you want to have that effect of things are happening. And obviously here it is a slave. But then if you grew up in the 90s, you probably recognize this logo. And if Imagine a world where you don't know what a clip is, right? Like a music video clip. And you're an investor and I'm pitching it to you. So I'm telling you that I am going to make really short films based on music, which are going to be around 3-4 minutes long, and I'm later going to build a channel and get people to see that, and I'm going to monetize it with commercials. It probably sounds like a weird idea, or sounded like a weird idea before it actually existed. But it worked, and the reason it worked is that it used music as a marketing engine. It used, people like music, right? Like if you're talking about how many users we have, like the music industry have 6 billion users easy, and we're not very good at monetizing people, but everyone likes music. And that's basically the logic here, to bring some message, in this case commercials, between the clips or inside the clips, and to have people experiencing music in a different way. If you think about a video clip, it's actually the biggest change of how we consume music in the past hundreds of years. And that was a pretty interesting take on that. And obviously here the music is the master. But there was actually another organization in history that used music to get the message through, and kind of used music as a marketing engine, and that's religion. Think about any religion in the world. It probably has strong musical influences to it, and music is there. Praying is usually done with music. There is usually a social aspect to it. Once in every week you meet and you pray together and you sing together. And the church even had some rules about what was considered holy when it comes to music. Usually chapels where you pray in all religions have good acoustics, because it's the experience. They were kind of, it's a good way to get a message through. If you're living in the Middle Ages, probably the best show in town is the church. And here music was used as a slave. So those are a few examples, and the question is, what can we learn from history, what is happening to music when it comes together with other arts. So we can say that usually music begins as a slave. It's usually there to support something, but then after some time a new genre is being created where it is the main focus. And a big difference usually is it's first in production versus last in production. And this, in the cases where the music is the master, the story is actually being told by the music, and sometimes the music is actually being used as a marketing engine. So as to our fight between Bach and Vivaldi, the real answer is that they coexist. There usually is a way, like a meeting between music and other form of art, and then there is a branch coming out of it where music is the main focus and the master. So, why do we care about all that? And what is happening in video games? In video games, actually, if you're thinking about the situation from a musician's perspective, we are the worst we have ever been in history. We are bound to a story, like in the case of the Four Seasons, but not only that, we're bound to an atmosphere and some specific turn of events, like in theater. We are also bound to very specific time, like in films, but unlike films, you can't predict what is going to happen. You don't know how long the music is going to last. You don't know, like, will the player spend there 5 minutes or will he spend there 10 minutes? You can't even predict the order of the tracks. Will the player go to the forest and then to a house, or the other way around? And that makes it much harder to plan motives and stuff like that. You can't even predict the sound effects. When you're watching, composing a film, and the camera goes near a big truck, you can assume that there is going to be engine sounds. But in a game, you don't know when it's going to happen. If it's a first-person shooter, maybe the player doesn't shoot now for a minute. And, or maybe he doesn't. There are a lot of explosions, and this hurts the music. And obviously, it's the last in production. There is also adaptive music, which is basically the music that is changing according to the player's actions. So if you think about it, we've given up on music. It's the player who is now composing. I, as a composer, don't know how the music is going to sound even. And I don't think that Bach, for example, would really like that idea of like composing something and then doesn't know, not to know how it will even sound. And so we're as enslaved as we ever were. But then, as we learn from history, games like that are coming along, and Guitar Hero, Rock Band, music-based games. And in those cases, the music is pre-composed, so it's first in production and the game is built upon that. The player reacts to the music and not the other way around, and the music is used as a selling point, and that's why it's so hard to license, as we heard before. And obviously here it is a master. But if you're a gamer, after you've played, at least me, after I played those games for hours and hours and had tons of fun, I had this feeling that the immersion can be different and more deep, let's say it like that. Because eventually those are games where you need to perform certain action at a certain time. And so it started, to me, to feeling master-rich. And I asked myself, why is that, and can we improve the immersion between the two? And I broke down gaming, and I thought about that there are some elements to gaming. There are story mechanics, interaction, visual, sound, social, immersion, and competition. Obviously, we can find some more or argue about those, but this is what I thought about. And music games today don't really have a story. They are mechanic-based, and they're very fun because of that. The interaction with the world doesn't really exist. The visuals are obviously there because it's a game, but they don't really matter. They don't add anything. They just let you know if you failed or succeeded. The integration with the sound is very good. There is a social aspect to it, although the first versions didn't have that. And the immersion was bad, but at the latest versions, they really worked hard to improving that, and I think it's a great idea, and it's a lot better. And then I thought this sounds familiar, and I suddenly realized that this is dancing. It's fun, it's cool, and we've been doing it for ages, but it's basically digital dancing, where you need to perform a certain action with your body at a certain time and with connection to the music. And I wanted to do this, and I was starting to think, would that be possible? Can we have an experience that will bring everything together and create a real immersion between the music and the game? And so I've opened Capricia Productions, which what we are doing is we're turning music albums into video games. And we decided that we want to make a project that will go to the extreme and will have all those elements. And then we thought, what genre should we tackle? And we asked ourselves, what are people listening to? Because maybe we should do jazz and maybe we should do pop. And so we found this. This is basically what are people listening to in the world. So pop is obviously the dominating genre, and rock is the next with 30%. And at the bottom we have funk and metal. Funk around 1.3, I think, and metal 2.6. And so we looked at that and we said, the conclusion is very obvious, we need to make a metal album. And because the numbers are there, right? But actually we did want to make a metal album, and we were very surprised because we felt that metal was a lot bigger. I think that, like, how many people here like metal in the room? All right. So this looks weird, right? But then we decided, okay, let's actually check this. What are gamers listening to? And there isn't a single research that we have found about that, so we had to do the research on our own. We're not a research company, but we did take it quite seriously. We've talked to hundreds of gamers from different ages, different countries, different gaming genres, and eventually we came up with this. And to me that was like, I was blown away. Firstly, because rock stays at 30%, which like we did it. That's just like what we got, and basically pop and metal switched, and that was for us was just amazing. And then we had like when investors were looking at us weirdly, asking why metal, we had an explanation. So the Birdcage is our project, and the idea is taking it to the extreme and making it like a super master. It has all the elements. The story is told through the music. The music never stops. The music is pre-composed, meaning the game is built for an already existing music, and the game is actually a visualization tool for the music. We want the world to be as immersive as possible, so it's first person. And it's a rock metal album, as I said before, and it's actually being performed by the music is original, but it's being performed by artists from Guns N' Roses and Evanescence, Within Temptation, Epica, and other well-known bands. So this is what it looks like, but this is the wrong version of PowerPoint, so I will have to alt-tab. And this is actual gameplay by someone, and again, the music is pre-composed and everything is written for it. And so the world basically reacts to the music, the explosions are synced with the music, and all the events of the story are actually synced with the music. The guy appearing from the fire when the metal starts, and the entry to the room is at the exact moment where the music calms down, although the player is free. He's not locked on an axe, he's just he's free to go wherever he wants. What's happening in the industry in general is pretty interesting. I think this combination between music and gaming is natural, and the speaker before me also said it's a very natural thing to combine. We can use music both as a marketing engine, and music can use our monetization skills and use us as a better and more interesting and engaging experience. And actually, and as we know from history, like, this genre has to be created, right? Because every other time in history where music met some form of art, there was this branch of where music is the main focus. And actually, the past few years, things are starting to go there. Obviously, there are projects like Guitar Hero, which you all know, but there are also a lot of different takes on that combination of music and games. There are a project named Karma Flow, which is Netherlands. I think it comes from the Netherlands, and it's a rock opera video game, and it's really awesome. It was released a couple of, I think, about half a year ago, something like that. Iron Maiden actually announced a few, I think 2 weeks ago, that they're working on a game, and it's an RPG, which again, think about the combination, it's very interesting. Brutal Legends, that I'm imagining that a lot of you heard about, is a game from EA that was all evolving around metal. And by the way, there is a lot of metal here for a reason, and that was the reason, because there's like a lot of connection between music lovers, like metal lovers, metalheads, and gamers. Avenged Sevenfold made a game, and there are more examples, the Birdcage, which we're working on. And I think that over the next few years, we're going to see this genre actually being created, because it's already here, but we are looking for the right way to do that. And there are like a lot of approaches, and ours is one of them, but there are a lot of approaches of how exactly to do this connection between games and music. But I think it's a genre that is being created, and there is a huge market for it, because everyone likes music, and it's going to be very interesting and cool. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I've just sort of got a tangential question. At what moment did you figure out that this was actually going to be a really fulfilling career? I mean, that's a lot of research into the relationship between music and art all the way to gameplay.
Yeah, I was a musician, and then I was hungry, and I wanted to make it. I'm kidding. I was working on an album with my Caprice is actually originally a metal band, and
Okay.
I was working on an album. We had an album. We signed with the label. We did all the normal like routine of label and shows and stuff like that, touring, radio, whatever. And at the end of the day, when we were working on the second album, we were asking ourselves why. And it was a concept album, and we kind of wanted the experience to be more special than just another album. And since I was composing for video games and living from that, it seemed like a natural take to try.
Hi. First, I want to say I think this is really, really cool what you're doing because I'm pretty much in exactly the same line. I've been wanting this kind of game for years now, and now that I see that there are actually people here making it, I'm like, holy shit, it's happening. But what I wanted to ask is more of a technical question, because from what I've understood from your presentation is that the player is still free to act within the game world. They're not locked to the music. How did you solve that problem? Like, what kind of algorithms did you use to make sure that everything is timed, everything happens at the correct moment, but there's still freedom for the player to choose as he or she wants to?
Yeah. So first of all, you'll be surprised how many times I hear that, like, oh, I wanted something like that for so long, and it's. I think it's really weird looking back that no one's tried that. I'm not saying it's even a good idea, but it's weird that nobody's really tried something like that. As for your question, it's actually the answer is very complex. I wanted to have a slide and explain like how we're doing it, but it takes a very long time. I will say that basically we're dividing the musical events to minor events and big events. We use minor events like guitar kicks and stuff like that for visual aids. So for example, a guitar kick can be an explosion or a flickering light or a camera shake or something like that. And the bigger musical events, for example, like a change from metal to something much calmer, will have something that drives the story. So at that moment, the story will change. For example, here, if you did not get to the room at the right time, then he will catch you, but he will catch you only at that moment when the music changes, and something else will happen in the game. You will wake up in a cage in this case. But there are like these moments where the story changes. That's basically the...
Okay, cool, thank you.
Quick question about the two pie charts. How did you define the gamers, or how did you came to the results?
How we defined who is a gamer? People who thought that they were gamers. We were literally like just asking people who were playing games and thought of themselves as gamers.
Self-identifying is a perfectly good method, yes. Arnold, thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.